Hello everyone, my name is Yulia and I'm happy to welcome you to the channel Yulia Engineer. In the previous lesson, we figured out what ArcGIS Pro is and took a general look at its interface. In this lesson, I want to add a bit of practice. We'll create a simple map, add layers to it, and explore what is where and how everything works. To begin, I'll create a new project for our lesson 2. I'll save it in the same folder where all the course lessons are stored. I also want to note that you don't need to download any additional data for this lesson. We will use publicly available data from ArcGIS Pro. First, I want to add point vector data of cities. To do this, I'll go to the Map tab. Then we go to Living Atlas and in the search bar type cities. I get several options of city layers that I can add. Let's choose the first one. We immediately see that a vector layer with cities has been added to the contents pane. The cities are grouped and displayed according to that classification, most likely based on population size. Now let's add polygon data. These will be state boundaries. Again, I go to Add Data, search in Living Atlas, type States, and select the available layer of state boundaries. Now our map contains both a point layer and a polygon layer. Next, I suggest we take a closer look at the Contents panel. We see that in addition to the layers currently displayed on the map, there are several tabs here. The first tab shows the layers and their drawing order. For example, if you want to move a layer above or below another one, you simply drag it. If I move the states above the cities would normally become hidden. However, because transparency is enabled, we can still see them. To make it clearer, let's remove the transparency and fill the states with a solid color. As you can see, the cities are now hidden. To make them visible again without transparency, you just move the city layer above the polygon layer. On the right, you also see the symbology panel appear, which I used when changing the state colors. Here, you can also see how the cities are classified. But let's not jump ahead and continue with the contents panel. In general, this panel shows a list of all layers on the map. Here you can manage their drawing order, delete layers via right-click arrow remove, or simply turn them off without deleting them. If you temporarily don't want to see a layer, you can uncheck it and it becomes invisible while still remaining in the project. Let's go through the next tabs in this panel. The next tab shows the data source of each layer. This is useful if you add data from different folders and later forget where a specific layer came from. You can always check its origin here. Of course, this information can also be found in the layer properties, but switching between tabs is often faster and more convenient. The next tab is Selection. Here we define which layers can be selected on the map. For example, if we try to select a city using the selection tool, we might accidentally select both the city and the state. If we want only cities to be selectable, we can disable selection for the states layer. We clear the selection using the clear button. You can also see the number of selected objects in each layer, which is very convenient. This feature is useful when working with large polygon layers that serve as a base map and should not be accidentally edited or selected. The next tab is Editing. Here we define which layers can be edited. Right now, ArcGIS Pro shows a warning icon, meaning this layer is not editable. This is likely because the data comes from an online source where users can only view but not modify it. To make it editable, it needs to be exported locally. Let's try exporting the data. I choose Export Data, save it into the lesson geodatabase, and name it Cities. Now the data is stored locally on my disk and becomes editable. The next tab is Snapping. Here we define which layers snapping will apply to. After that comes Labeling, which controls labels for map features. Let's zoom into some cities and enable labeling. You may notice a loading indicator in the corner. If something takes time, always check whether the process is still running. We've now enabled labels for cities. These can also be customized later, for example, by choosing which attribute fields are used. We will cover this in future lessons. The next tab will be used later for working with imagery in perspective mode, so we'll return to it in future lessons. Now let's go back to the first tab, where the drawing order of layers is shown. Here we see that the first city layer is the one we exported locally, and the polygon layer is the online dataset. If layer names are similar and you want to confirm which one is local or online, the Source tab is very helpful. For example, here I can see which layer comes from an online source and which is stored locally in my ArcGIS Pro folder. Now I can safely remove the duplicate layer. Back on the first tab, I feel more comfortable working with the map because it clearly shows layer order without extra information. You can also right-click a layer and open a large context menu. One useful option is Zoom to Layer, which zooms directly to the full extent of the selected layer. On the right, we also have symbology settings, where we can define how features are displayed. For example, cities can be represented as a single symbol, same for all features, categorize symbols based on attributes, graduated colors, proportional symbols, or charts. Right now, cities are symbolized based on a field called class. There is also a capital field which indicates whether a city is a state capital or a national capital. Let's change the styling. State capitals will be black and the national capital will be red. Now we can clearly see Washington as the national capital in red, while state capitals are black and all other cities remain as default symbols. You can also adjust symbol size, color, outline, and apply effects for more advanced cartography. There is also a scale-based visibility setting. This allows symbols to appear or disappear depending on zoom level. This is useful when there are many cities that would otherwise overlap when zoomed out. Finally, let's improve the overall appearance of the map. I'll change the state color to a more pleasant orange, adjust the border to a darker tone, and restore some transparency. Now the map looks much better. We will also keep city visibility at the current zoom level. In this lesson, we explored the Contents panel, learned about its tabs, how to enable and disable layers, manage their order, and understand the layer properties. We also briefly introduced symbology and how to customize map appearance. That's it for today. See you in the next lesson. Bye bye.